Mountains are so old that even those youngest appeared earlier than first human beings. Much earlier. However, once there was a special day when people finally met mountains. In the origin of humankind, they were only a heap of stones with no value to prehistoric people. They seemed unattainable and dangerous. Thousands of years later, in the ancient era, mountains were associated with various gods. They were simply sacred places. A great example is Mount Olympus, treated in the ancient Greece as an abode of Zeus and other Greek gods. It was definitely inaccessible for people. What is even more interesting, there were some places where mountains were not nearby. For example, ancient Egypt, where pyramids for pharaohs were built on the pattern of mountains. Centuries later, when other religions arose, people looked at mountains in a more practical way. Building a city surrounded by mountains was a brilliant strategy. Enemy soldiers could not pass them easily. In the medieval era, mountains were exploited in order to gain precious natural resources and building materials. Nonetheless, the true fascination with mountains occurred a bit later. Artists began to consider natural beauty as a supreme value. Painters started to draw wonderful landscapes, displaying elevated areas. Even some of the poetry was focused on mountains. Thanks to art, the fascination had begun to flourish. The mountain exploration in Europe began on the 8th of August 1786 when two climbers, Michael Gabriel Packard and Jacques Balmat, successfully ascended Mont Blanc at the request of a scientist, Horace Benedict. From the peak, they calculated Mont Blanc's altitude and were mistaken only by around 300 meters. Mont Blanc was established as the highest mountain in the world. However, at that time, no one in Europe knew that there were peaks twice as high on our planet, still not conquered. The feat of reaching Mont Blanc changed the mountaineering world significantly. People realized that climbing high mountains is possible. The idea of capturing the world from a higher and higher perspective has become a worldwide competition. At that time, artists' goal was not to draw mountains, but to depict the view seen from their top. From then, mountaineering was only about pushing the boundaries. Generally speaking, high-altitude climbing from its origin was about continuous discovery of new perspectives, higher perspectives. In the 19th century, mountaineering exceeded beyond Alps and other mountains in Europe. Climbers from the old continent started to conquer other peaks. Summits like Chimborazo in the South America, Kilimanjaro in Africa, or Mount St. Elias in North America. These were immense successes in the 19th century, which were a significant push forward. At that time, mountain conquest took on a more international flavor. The final frontier was set by the highest mountains of our globe, Himalayas and Karakoram. The development in geography allowed to define that there were 14 peaks exceeding the barrier of 8,000 meters, all of them in the mountain range of Himalayas. Mountaineering became a sport. Football, basketball, baseball, all of these were played on specific courts, and the court of high-altitude climbing competitions were, of course, Himalayas. Ascending a mountain is a team game, despite the fact that sometimes only one person reaches the summit. A bunch of people is needed to make climbing in the highest mountains possible. In a short period of 14 years, between 1950 and 1964, every 8,000er was reached. by teams from all over the world. The first ascent of Mount Everest, made by George Mallory and Tenzing Norgay, was a stunning moment. The Mountaineering Society thought that at this point, every challenge that mountains could give to humans has been accomplished. Nothing could be further from the truth. It is true that every 8,000 there has been conquered, but only during summer. The next challenge was climbing in the winter time. Poles became masters in this new competition. They managed to put their feet on 10 out of 14 peaks in the winter season. Perhaps that is why they have been called Ice Warriors. First winter ascent of Mount Everest has been completed by Krzysztof Wielicki and Leszek Cichy. It was definitely one of the biggest successes in Polish Himalayasm. In high-altitude climbing, there is an individual feat, getting the crown of Himalayas. In order to reach it, one climber has to summit all 14 8,000ers. Like Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi in football, in the mountaineering world, Arnold Messner and Jerzy Kukuczka were competing for a title of the first human to accomplish this feat and get the crown of Himalayas. Messner won the race, however Kukuczka completed the crown only 1 year later in unquestionably better style. Some of the peaks were reached by him during winter, whereas on a few others he paved new routes. 3 months ago, the chapter of winter ascents finally came to its end, when Sherpas from Nepal surprisingly reached K2 summit, which is the second highest mountain in the world. At this moment, it is worth mentioning that the limit push and creation of new boundaries in the world of high-altitude climbing was not as straightforward as it sounds. 1,055 people died in the name of exploring new perspectives in the Himalayas. Climbers were dying under avalanches due to low temperatures, due to high-altitude sickness, or simply bad weather. It is a deadly passion, but every climber knows it and takes the risk into account. There must be something purely magical in mountains so that people decide to risk their lives in their name. Now it is high time for a new chapter in the mountaineering world to begin. The question is, what will be the new boundary? The technical development and the expanding knowledge will increase human possibilities, like it has been so far. 70 years ago, reaching Mount Everest was a prime feat of physical power. Now, during the spring season, on the highest mountain of our globe, there is a supermarket queue in the summit zone. Recently, in the mountaineering world, a new trend appeared. Climbing an 8,000er with skis on the back and then skiing it down. A Polish climber, Andrzej Bargiel, has popularized it. Who knows, maybe this is the new perspective.